There's at least a person of interest for the Michigan coaching search, but fans are up in arms about it. Is that warranted? We'll answer that on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back in doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thank you to all of our everydayers who watch or listen to the show every single day. And big thank you for making us your first listen. For the first segment, we'll get into the Jeff Brohm candidacy, where that may actually stand, what I've heard about it. Then we'll get into whether it would actually be a bad hire, as many have surmised out of the gates at this point. And finally, some troubling things in the Detroit Free Press's report on Sherrone Moore. Let's get into all of that. So much to get into. So first, it's interesting because now we're finally, at least we have someone to talk about. And we can credit Sam Webb with kind of starting the train here. Of him talking about it. I mean, he's been talking about Jeff Brohm the whole time. So I've been told. And nonetheless, that doesn't necessarily mean that this is Michigan's coach in waiting at this point. As I speak at the moment, Louisville is playing Toledo. Last I checked about 10 minutes ago, which doesn't matter by the time this show airs. They were up by 7. Toledo had the ball at midfield. Nonetheless, it does sound like he is a candidate. However, the same stuff exists that I said on yesterday's show, on Monday's show, is that just because he seems to be a candidate, like I cross-referenced this with my colleague Josh Henschke, and he said the same thing that I have heard. It sounds like coming from the Louisville side that it absolutely he is a candidate. But Michigan has been kind of quiet about it still, right? So I did speak to someone relatively high up. They could not confirm nor deny. So it is what it is as far as that's concerned. But, we're at an interesting crossroads here because, yeah, maybe they do hold off for Kalen, DeBoer still. Maybe they decide to go with Jeff Brohm. We'll have a pretty good idea in the next 24 hours if that ends up being a hire that Michigan decides to make. I've seen how up in arms a lot of you are. I don't think that is like, let me try to kind of walk a fine line here. I don't think the up in arms is warranted for Jeff Brohm. I get it, right? Like, it's not the splash. This isn't like, okay, getting the next up and coming, all of that kind of stuff. And we'll get into some of the numbers in segment 2 to kind of tell you a little bit more about what he's been able to do as a head coach. But I get that it's uninspiring. And part of me, and I feel that too, right? Like I look at my bottom line. I'm like, if they hired Kenny Dillingham, who had a lot of hype, versus hiring Jeff Brohm, I think is in terms of y'all wanting to read my stuff on Wolverines Wire or y'all wanting to watch Locked On Wolverines. I think it's apples and oranges, right? I think if Michigan was to look at like a Glenn Schulman from the defensive coordinator at Georgia, I think people would be a heck of a lot more excited. But there are certain candidates that people just aren't going to care for. Let me be clear. If it is Jeff Brohm, that is still a massive upgrade, as we'll definitely hear more about coming in segment 3 than what they just had. Okay. I get it. You look and say, well, it's been kind of middling at Purdue or Louisville. I mean, he's improved both of those programs. I mean, and Western Kentucky, which I use CFP stats. They only go back to 2016, and I didn't do research beyond like I don't think it necessarily is pertinent at this point to go back 11 years to really dig even deeper on this guy. He's been a head coach for a long time, and he's made every program he's been at better. Right. So I think that that's an important point of distinction. But I also get that, like, everyone felt like, okay, you got Nick Saban out on College Game Day saying he's that Michigan rather is a top 5 job. And to end up with Jeff Brohm does feel like a bit of a disappointment, because it feels like you should be able to do something more. And I think that people would have been a lot happier if this happened a week earlier and they were able to get Matt Campbell. We kind of have already been through all of that. But at the same time, I don't think that Jeff Brohm is like this terrible, terrible hire either. I don't know. Maybe Steve Dace talked me into it a little bit. But at the same point, I don't know that he's the favorite as this kind of all of a sudden seems. Again, just having talked to a colleague, having talked to someone that is high up in the midst of all of this, a lot of the smoke seems to be coming from the Louisville side of things. And, he was close to inking an extension. Penn State wanted him as well. He told Penn State no. Louisville still wants to keep him. I think that's something worth noting, is that the school he's at wants to keep him. The fans, I've seen enough on social media of the fans wanting to keep him. But for Michigan fans are like, no. And I get it. I'm not saying I don't get it. But, I think some of the narratives out there are insane at the same time. The sky wouldn't be falling. Michigan's not going to be perennially 8-4 probably, right? Like if Sherrone Moore can make it, like, he went 8-5 last year, won 9 games this year. If he can do that, Jeff Brohm can do better than that, I think. And at least he has a track record of putting together some really good offenses. But I get that it's not that splash hire. And part of me wonders if there isn't some sense of feeling spoiled by getting Jim Harbaugh. Now, Michigan isn't spoiled in a lot of ways, right? Like I was in college when Lloyd Carr retired, and that's what got me started along the train. Like if it wasn't for all of that, I don't know if I would have become have this insatiable thirst for Michigan football information, because I was, a senior at Michigan wanting to know if Les Miles was going to end up being the coach. I watched live as Kirk Herbstreit said that he was set to be hired along with John Tenuta. And I was just, over the moon in that moment. Right. So and then everything that transpired after that, not great. But, if he's set up, and this goes for any Michigan head coach, because here's where I agree with Biff Poggi, is that being a head coach in college football, it's not entirely schematic. I think it's more than he's leading on. Like, yes, you can have a CEO head coach, but, Jeff Brohm brings schematic to it, but it is also very much who you hire and how you recruit. And I understand recruiting wise, Brohm has not been like incredible in terms of like where, Louisville or Purdue has stood. But at the same time, he's been very good at identifying guys. There's some guys like Devin Maccabee's still playing guys. He's gotten several, whether it's Rondale Moore or was it the Bell kid, right? Like he's had some insane, like really, really good players, and he still managed to get some really good players like George Karlaftis, right? Like that. I know he was a hometown kid. He still beat out Michigan. Michigan wanted him and couldn't get him. So, and Yanni Karlaftis as well. So, I mean, he's able to do the job is the important thing. And I know there's a lot that don't want to hear that. There's a lot that want a bigger name. I'm with you. It makes my life easier when you all are happy. Okay. And I know not everyone's going to be happy. It's that's just kind of the nature of everything at this point. But I don't think it's that bad if that's the route Michigan decides to go. I think we'll find out more here soon in the next 24 hours. And if that's the case, we'll give Sam Webb all the flowers for being right on this one. But ultimately, though, at this point, I'm still hearing that the smoke is still more coming from the Louisville side than it is from the Michigan side. So that's where it stands as far as I know at this point. Could that change, especially with the bowl game done? Absolutely. Right. Just because I'm saying right now, you have to understand how these things work. Just because I'm saying at this moment, the Michigan side seems quiet and the Louisville side seems louder, doesn't mean that doesn't change. Right. Like nothing that's ever said here on the show ever just stands in a vacuum. right? Like things change, not just in college football, but in the world. And certainly it appears that Michigan is at least of interest. Now, does that interest end up in a job? That remains to be seen, and we'll see. So, all right, we've got a ton more to get to, and we've got to get to it quickly because the show's going to be really long otherwise. Anyway, we will do that here in just a moment. But before we do, there's nothing like college football season. Tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. The energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I opened the Game Time app to look at upcoming college football games. Was surprised to see how fast it was to find great seats. The app is incredibly easy to use. I went from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. I love being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so I knew exactly what I was getting. The zone deal stood out. You pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more. I checked it out, and you can even get into the Citrus Bowl against Texas for just $54 right now. Or if you want to go all out, you can get those 50-yard line seats for about $200 in the lower bowl at Camping World Stadium. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you for making Locked On Wolverines your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Wolverines with no interruptions. The members-only Discord access. I'm on there. You want to ask me questions, I'll answer them. And more. All of that for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnWolverines.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. Lots to get into as far as Jeff Brohm's past. I think that there's a lot of misinformation. And I was, I had the same arguments as some of you in some of my private conversations with people. It's like, hey, he's got great offenses, bad defense. Not really true. Not really true. Have they been insane defenses? Not necessarily, but some of them have been very good. And again, like as long as he comes to town, if Michigan ends up making him the choice and he comes to town and they say, hey, this is what we want you to look like as the Michigan football head coach, right? Like here are the expectations of the job. It's not just, hey, come here, do what you do, man. Right? Like if it's come here, like we want to run the football. We want to, we want to be strong defensively. And as long as you're doing those things and, being competitive, your floor is 9-3, your ceiling's undefeated. I think that would be kind of part of the conversation, right? Michigan has to have expectations too. And I think 9-3 is probably low, but I think if you're being realistic, I'm just saying being realistic. But as Steve Dace texted me when he tweeted this out, he's had 5,000-yard rushers too. Everyone thinks of him as being pass heavy. That's generally true. But Kalen DeBoer's had 1,000-yard rusher. That's it. So, I think Kalen DeBoer comes with, obviously a stronger pedigree overall. Turned Fresno State into something pretty good. Washington got them to the national championship game. He's maintaining Alabama, but I don't think he's necessarily pushed Alabama to another level. It's no guarantee if it's Kalen DeBoer that he works out here either, especially because of just some stylistic differences. I think where I differ a little bit is I would want someone that's going to come in and be have that defensive pedigree as well. But again, you can hire for that, right? It's not like Sherrone Moore had a defensive pedigree either. And yet he made a good hire in Wink Martindale. I know some of you disagree, but let's look at what Jeff Brohm has been able to do. All right. Louisville, 2025. The 70th offense, but both starting running backs were hurt this year. So therefore they kind of fell off. Miller Moss didn't turn out to be quite what was hoped. 64th in rushing, 67th in passing. Number 16 defense in the country though. 8-4 thus far. We'll see if they get to win number 9. They've got wins over 2 playoff teams, James Madison, and I know that, does that count? I don't know. And Miami, who does move on. Also a win over Pitt. They had 3 one-score losses out of their 4 losses to Pitt, Clemson, and Cal. I believe SMU was the one that wasn't a one-score loss. In 2024, they had the number 13 offense. Tyler Shuck was a top quarterback in the country. They had a very balanced attack with 3,433 yards passing, 2,407 rushing. They were 26th in the country passing, 33rd in rushing overall. Had a 1,000-yard rusher in Isaac Brown, who had 1,173. 64th ranked defense, again 8-4. They had a win over Clemson. Losses to Notre Dame, SMU, and Miami, 2 of those being college football playoff teams last year. In 2023, his first year at Louisville, at his alma mater, the 42nd ranked offense, very balanced with 24.99 in rushing, 33.13 in passing. Again, right there by hovering around Michigan's season career passing yards, 3,331. 57th in country passing, 38th in rushing. Jahar Jordan had over 1,000 yards rushing, and Isaac Orendo, former Wisconsin running back, nearly had 1,000 yards. They beat ranked Notre Dame and NC State, lost to undefeated Florida State in the ACC championship game without their quarterback. So there's that. But 21st ranked defense in the country, went 10-4 that year. But they did lose the last 3 games of the year, losing to Kentucky, Florida State, and the bowl game as well. All right, going to his time at Purdue. In 2022, he did have the Big Ten championship game lost to Michigan. They did kind of back into that. Had the 56th ranked offense, led by a 22nd ranked passing attack. Not great in rushing. The rushing in general, not phenomenal at Purdue. 53rd defense. 8-6 that year, with wins over Minnesota, Maryland, Nebraska, Illinois, Northwestern, and Indiana. Losses to ranked Penn State, lost to Syracuse. They lost at Wisconsin, to Iowa, Michigan, and LSU. Devin Mockabee almost became the first running back in his tenure at Purdue to eclipse 1,000 yards. Just short. It was like 986 or something like that, if memory serves. In 2021, had the 33rd ranked offense, the 5th in the world, passing, 127th ranked rushing. So that's kind of a theme at Purdue. But at Louisville, he's been able to run the football. 46th ranked defense, 8-4 that year. They had ranked wins, or 2 ranked wins in that season against Iowa and against MSU. It was one of, if you remember, that was the game that helps propel Michigan into the Big Ten championship. Right, MSU had to lose that game, and Jeff Brohm came to the table. He also beat Tennessee that year, lost to Notre Dame, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. So 2020, who cares? But they were 2-4, won the first 2 games, lost the last 4, 16th in the country passing. 2019 was 4-8, not good, except for in passing the football. 2018 they went 6-6. Really good passing offense, bad rushing offense, bad defense. Did beat number 3 Ohio State, led by Urban Meyer, the same day that Michigan beat MSU. And they also beat number 25 Iowa. Lost to Eastern Michigan. They lost to Eastern Michigan, but beat Ohio State. Mizzou and MSU that year. And that wasn't a good MSU team either. That tells you how funny things can be. Anyway, that's kind of the point. I don't need to really keep on. I've got a couple more years here. I've got Western Kentucky and all of that. It's been somewhat middling. He's been working with less in these cases. Like Purdue, in the pre-NIL era, certainly not anywhere near in the same conversation as Michigan or Ohio State, Penn State. And yet, he got wins over some of these programs. He got wins over MSU. And I would say Purdue is in kind of a worse shape than MSU in most cases here. So, yeah, I think there's that. He's done more with less. At Louisville, it's a little bit better, but it's still and I know people go, well, he's middling in a bad ACC. You work with what you have. And I think that someone like him coming to Michigan could end up working out well. Again, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I'm not saying I'm all behind this. But is it a bad hire? It would not be a bad hire. It would be a fine hire, but it wouldn't be a home run. I know my overlords at USA Today had it as 9 out of 10, top of their board of all the options out there. I think it would be a fine hire. It's not going to get everyone super excited. He's got enough of a track record in the Power Four to tell you that no, it's not going to be another Brady Hoke or a Rich Rod, right? Like, he's got a track record that at least says the offense is going to be really good. Generally, the passing offense is going to be really good. And that's like, you've got Bryce Underwood. Okay. So as long as Bryce Underwood sticks it out, like, it's a great situation to maximize the potential of him. And that's what Michigan needs more than anything at this point right now. Maximize Bryce Underwood and the passing game. And then you go from there. He was 4-1 against Indiana. I forgot to look at what his record was against Kentucky at Louisville, but I don't think it'd be a bad hire. It would be a fine hire. And I think in some regards, it's kind of like, I think about like all of the Lions hires that they've had. How many times have they went and got the guy that I wanted? Steve Mariucci or Matt Patricia, and it doesn't work out. But then they hired Jim Caldwell. I was not on the Dan Campbell train. And those do work out. Sometimes the guy that you want doesn't end up working out, and the guy that you don't want does. So I think that you got to take it with that perspective. All right, we're going to move on. We got plenty more to talk about with this Tony Garcia column. Not column, but just expose. Oof, we're going to read some quotes from that and react to that. We'll do that here in just a moment. But before we do, NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. I want to thank both the people of the den and the fort at On3 for not only checking out the show, but posting yesterday's show. Although I got some haters on the fort apparently. Show me on the doll where I hurt you. I don't know why you hate me so much. And I understand there's some that are like, oh, Isaiah doesn't know anything. Listen, I tell you when I don't know something. And a lot of times I'm not advertising everything I know here or in writing. Might go elsewhere. Okay? That's kind of part of how this works for me very specifically. So there's that. All right, let's get to some troubling Sherrone Moore things here that Tony Garcia compiled. Heard yesterday that this was coming out, and I think it delivered in terms of kind of sharing where everything is, or at least was, with Sherrone Moore. So I'm going to read you some parts of it. It's not all together. I encourage you to go to the Free Press and read it yourself. But there's just a little parts, and I just have them separated by snippets here. And I can't even tell where some snippets start and some end here, but just the way I have it loaded in. But let's get to some of it. Starting off, in a meeting called by the then Michigan football coach on a cold afternoon in Ann Arbor, Moore delivered a vitriolic outburst featuring tears and tossed papers and a virtual harbinger of his downfall at Michigan a scant 10 months later. This was back in February. Moore's ire was directed at Wink Martindale. Continues later, says, instead, the relationship between the two began to devolve even before spring ball. Quote, Sherrone wasn't even speaking to his coaches over the last recent month, a high-ranking university official who spoke on the condition of anonymity to protect their relationships told the Free Press shortly after Moore was fired. The disconnect had one coach targeted, specifically, said the official, Wink. The seed was seemingly planted when Moore overheard coaches discussing a potential recruit and quickly called a meeting. According to a person with knowledge of the meeting, Moore began screaming at the staffers that everybody needed to be on the same page and that he didn't want people, quote, talking behind his back, unquote, about recruits. Martindale piped up saying, look, we're trying to help you get the right recruits. Moore responded, you don't know what the bleep you're doing. Martindale, then 61, retorted, yeah, I'm just the old guy, drawing an eruption from the 39-year-old Moore, who had been in charge of the UM program for roughly 13 months following 6 years as an assistant coach in Ann Arbor. Let's pause there. There's more to get to, but first and foremost, it wasn't this specific situation, but it was something similar that had happened. And I've confirmed this leftwards, rightwards, frontwards, backwards. Something similar to that happened after the USC game. And so with that, that's what Jack Tuttle was talking about on that show that drew a lot of ire. I even got DMs from people being like, F Jack Tuttle, which I don't know why that was necessary. He's just trying to inform you of things he was hearing. And he was also very positive about it. Like, I'm sure they're going to get it fixed and all that kind of stuff if you watch that whole show. But a lot of people owe Jack Tuttle an apology because a lot of people were really piling on him and acting like, man, this is really bad. I think my watch is logged off, which is why I'm getting notifications here aloud. That is correct. So that's already not great. There was certainly some consternation between those two. Wink Martindale and Sherrone. And I've heard this from a lot of people close to the situation. All right, let's continue reading here. It was a lot of guys who this is a quote. It was a lot of guys who might have not been ready for jobs. They were really gifted. End quote. Another person who previously worked in the building said on the condition of anonymity for employment reasons. This is talking about the state of the team with the coaches. Start quote again. Kirk Campbell is QB coach. And last year as OC, we're like two completely different people. Newsome will be a good coach someday, one of the brightest individuals I've been around, but was he ready to be O-line coach at Michigan? End quote. By the end of 2025, many of Moore's relationships inside Schembechler Hall had fractured, including arguably his most important with his defensive coordinator. Yeah, they did not like each other, a person who witnessed their interactions told the Free Press. So that's just, again, more fuel to the fire as far as that's concerned. Now, this is also troubling because this is, if true, I need to make this caveat. This is Tony Garcia's reporting. This isn't mine. Continuing. It wasn't just Moore who had outbursts, though. Tight ends coach Steve Casula, now the interim offensive coordinator following the departure of Chip Lindsey on Sunday after just one season for the same job with Missouri, came up in multiple independent conversations with people. Here we go. With inside knowledge of the Michigan program. One former staffer said Casula, quote, bullied the hell, end quote, out of some of the lower level staffers on the team, telling them to, quote, shut the bleep up. They're nothing. They should be fired, end quote. Trying to make a suggestion to Casula, the staffer continued, was like stepping on glass, and his verbal abuse, that's a quote, verbal abuse, was a prime example of toxicity in the building. So that's all I'm going to read. There's a lot more. Again, I'm not going to speak on Casula, but I mean, there's a lot of troubling things, and this is kind of why it feels like, yeah, they need an exorcism in Ann Arbor. It's not just cleaning house; they need an exorcism. But things were not going well, and once I finally in mid-October, which I think is why I was told about the staffer stuff. It was because things weren't going well, and finally that's not on, that's on them when they decided to say something, but they decided to say something nonetheless, and that's where we ended up. So all was not hunky-dory, all was not good, and it needs an exorcism. And we'll see who that ends up being, if it's Jeff Brohm or someone else, but that's it. Before I go, offer hugs to those on the fort that hate me for whatever reason. I'm sorry you feel that way about me. Wonder if it has something to do with the hat that I wear on the show all the time. I'm guessing. Show me on the doll where I hurt you, as I said. And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to end. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.